This summer, RealD introduces new clip-on 3D lenses for moviegoers who wear prescription glasses, set to make 3D moviegoing more comfortable for a large segment of audiences. RealD's Summer of 3D slate includes Disney's The Mandalorian and Grogu, Toy Story 5, and Moana, Sony and Marvel's Spider-Man Brand New Day, Warner Brothers' Supergirl, and Universal and Illumination's Minions and Monsters. These premium 3D moviegoing choices will fill cinemas all summer, appealing to broad and diverse audiences, fangirls, fanboys, and families. RealD delivers unforgettably fun cinematic moments for moviegoers and profitable premium format showings for cinema partners. With growing interest from both filmmakers and consumers, 3D is driving box office growth year over year. Enter new dimensions of cinematic storytelling at RealD.com.
So globally, the 3D box office between 25 and 24 grew almost 30% year on year. While at the same time, it was a strong box office year for the whole industry, but the whole industry grew 8%. And so we see the 3D business significantly outpacing the growth of the total industry as more films are available, as cinemas, as you say, project in spectacular laser presentation, as consumers are reminded of the terrific experience that 3D can be.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. And in this week's episode, we are joined by Elizabeth Frank, the CEO of RealD, the world's leading 3D provider, going over all of the latest innovations and a very busy summer for the format. I've been calling 3D the sleeping giant in terms of PLF. And I think that potential that we've always recognized in 3D is finally going to be fulfilled this summer with a slate full of movies. Elizabeth joins us in the second half of the podcast to go into everything 3D. But before that, I am joined in this week's panel by Rebecca Pahle from Box Office Pro and from our good friend from the Box Office Network, Romeo Duchenne, making his grand return in the podcast. Romeo, it's been a while? A year? No. Has it been over a year?
It's been over a year. I missed you so much, guys.
Since CinemaCon, 2 CinemaCons ago, I guess?
2 CinemaCons ago.
For Rebecca, yeah, on the podcast, maybe we had you earlier in 2025. We didn't forget about you, Romeo. You're still here. We're happy to bring you back. And Romeo's here because last week when we were tracking the titles to come in, he was the first one to tell me, as early as Monday, here in our forecasting panel, that Obsession from Focus Features was going to hit $15 million plus on the opening weekend. I told Romeo, you're the only guy here in our forecasting panel that has a number that high. The Showtime's data that we have does not align with a number that big. And Romeo said, let's talk on Sunday. And Sunday comes in, he sends me a nice message saying $16 million with an exclamation mark. Well, Romeo, 16 was too short because the actuals just came in for the weekend. A fantastic opening weekend performer from Curry Barker's Focus Features horror flick. Obsession opening to $17.1 million, just slightly below the $17.8 million from The Devil Wears Prada 3. So I think just really a photo finish that we did not expect here for third place. And coming into Memorial Day weekend, who knows who's going to end up on top. So let's go over everything here ahead of us before we go into that Memorial Day preview at the box office. Rebecca, we got a press release from our friends over at Regal over a big rebrand to the Regal Cineworld of it all.
Looking at the details of it, it doesn't seem like it's going to impact day-to-day operations. What was formerly known as the Regal Cinema Group is now Regal Global Entertainment. That's the wider overarching corporate parent of it all. And we have a new Brian McAndrews has come on as chairman of the board. Really, that's it that we know so far. All of
new names in company, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And new names for the individual chains in which now Regal Entertainment Group operates. Cineworld's still going to be called Cineworld. Picture House is still Picture House. So I think it makes sense. I don't know. I'm furiously going through our proofs, trying to change this name as we prepare for the next magazine.
because it comes in right as we prepare our Giants of Exhibition coverage. We'll have our European Giants of Exhibition story coming up in June in Barcelona for Cine Europe. And then in July, we'll be releasing our North America Giants of Exhibition. You'll be hearing from us. Just make sure to send over your latest screen count and location count so we can have the rate data here in front of us. And the last bit of news here is an update on the release format for a title that's just been picking up momentum left and right. Now, we know that there's already $7.5 million in pre-sales for the amazing digital circus, The Last Act, that is going to be released by Fathom Entertainment in June. We just got word that they are adding a premium format release for this event cinema title, Rebecca. What's the latest on this?
Yeah, so this is a title that is really just been blowing up like crazy in terms of pre-sales. It's a very strong, very passionate fan group wanting to have this communal experience. Now they'll be able to have that communal experience while sitting in 4DX immersive motion seats at select Regal locations. Regal also noted that, I know this is the question that everyone has been asking about every movie. Yes, it is going to get custom popcorn bucket and soda cup. So getting some of those perks, some of those things that really eventize a screening for this sort of, niche. It's not something that I think people in our age range would necessarily know. I didn't know what it was until our VP of sales, Patricia, told me about how excited her son was. So I think for younger generations, this is going to be a really big deal.
Well, let's use that as a launching point to react to the movies that we saw last weekend. We heard from our colleague, Chad Kenner, who's sitting out this week. He went to go check out the Guy Ritchie film In the Gray over at the Harkins Theaters Northfield 18 location. He had a fantastic time there. Rebecca, I know you were hit by transit strikes over in Queens, New York, so you had to sit out this weekend at home.
I did. Eric and I, we had tickets to see Obsession on Saturday, and then the MTA decided that they weren't going to have the 7 train go into Manhattan from Queens. And then, of course, the Long Island Railroad went on strike, a strike that is thankfully just now wrapping up as we record this. But yeah, I still were going to have to see it. My parents saw it. They had called me asking, what looks good? What have you seen? What have you heard? I said, Obsession, I've heard good things about it. Dad liked it. Mom didn't. But I think Dad was laughing as he told me about it. So I think it was something that struck him as an interesting film. From that 17.1, two people in their 70s at the Regal Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina, got in there.
I love it. I'll share my own reaction to Obsession shortly, but I want to hear from Romeo because you were attending LA screenings earlier this week in Los Angeles. What were you able to check out at this event?
So yeah, as you know, LA screening is a lot about TV show. But yesterday I was at the Universal lot and they screened an extended version of the trailer Disclosure Day. I think Disclosure Day is planned to be released on June 12th, if I'm not wrong. And I can say I'm very excited. It was not really under my radar until then, but looking at this extended version, I cannot wait to watch.
There's a lot of buzz around the title. The forecasting has been slowly climbing. I'm seeing an advanced screening, I believe, next week. We're interviewing David Kep, the screenwriter, for our website. So yeah, it's one of those titles that, I don't think is going to be a huge blockbuster hit that defines the summer. But you have to think $100 million plus on domestic run has to be the target here. I think it'll get there. I think it might end up somewhere in the, let's say, mid 100s when all is said and done in North America. You liked what you saw, Romeo?
I loved what I've seen. I cannot wait to watch the next Spielberg. Spielberg is my thing, so I grew up with him.
He's the GOAT. He's the
not
GOAT.
particularly, but we all grew up with him.
I love it. Talking about generational differences and things we grew up with, I'll use that as a transition to share my reactions for Obsession. I saw this at the AMC Magic Johnson in Harlem, which, by the way, we say this all the time. Watching a horror movie with an African-American audience is always worth your time. It's always fun. It's a lot more interactive. That should be a premium format.
It should be.
Itself.
Book your ticket for Scary Movie 6 at that theater now.
Oh, that's only going to be fun. That theater, by the way, they've tweaked it. They renovated. It looks fantastic. The laser projection in the auditoriums that they installed from Barco really raised the quality of that location. It was probably the first experience I've ever had watching a horror movie, not a comic book movie, not an animated movie, but a horror movie made for adults, where I realize I'm 20 years too old to be watching this. Like, this is made for someone 20 years younger than me.
Going through the throes of romantic obsession and
Well, it's just, it speaks in a way where you can very clearly see that this isn't your vernacular. This isn't for your generation, in the way that maybe we take for granted, Rebecca, when we watch one of those horror movies in the post-Scream era in the late 90s, or maybe those like high school sex comedies like American Pie and everything that came afterward. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I include movies like Road Trip and Van Wilder, for example. Some movies have aged better than others, but those were sort of the movies, our window, let's say 1996 to 2006. In our generation, that feels like something they did now in a way that I can understand. I've seen movies, obviously, that are older that I realize, oh, this is a movie of its era. I've never seen a film, and now that I've just hit 40, made for adults where I realize I'm 2 times too old to be watching this. This is made for much younger people.
Did you see a couple of years ago, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies? I was rewatching that the other day.
You had that feeling?
No, I was wondering if you had that feeling, because I liked the film, but it was definitely just the characters and the slang and the language and the dialogue felt very people who grew up on the internet, which it is.
Which I get, right? And when you think about like the prime audience for a horror movie, 15 to 25 makes sense. Now, it's an R-rated film, but how many R-rated films, guys, did we see growing up as teenagers? This is a movie for teenagers. So if you're a teenager looking for a horror movie, this is probably going to be highly resonant. I think at the core of Obsession, what makes the movie interesting, and I think this is a significantly more interesting film than a lot of the award season movies that we get in the second half of the year, in the sense that Obsession has a perspective. Obsession has something to say. Obsession is there for you to watch, have a good time, and then have a conversation with the people you saw.
Has it grown on you? Have you? Is it one of those?
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
All right.
Like, it clearly wasn't speaking to me. And I'm someone that tends to like these themes. Male desire and it being misconstrued. I mean, it's part of the legacy that was born out of Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, which the greatness of Vertigo is all about, that sense of male desire and insecurity and fantasizing about an idea of a romantic partner rather than dealing with the person in front of you is something that great films have been able to tackle. You've got David Lynch doing this twice with Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive. You've got movies like Luis Buñuel, my favorite director, with Tristana and That Obscure Object of Desire that I think do it quite well. So there's a canon in this. Obsession isn't good enough to be in that canon, but Obsession doesn't want to be in that canon. Obsession doesn't want to win me over. It doesn't want to compete against David Lynch, Buñuel, or Hitchcock. Obsession wants to talk to the people that maybe watch viral videos about a washed-up kickboxer turned pornographer. Or maybe people that watch videos about, I don't know, a nightclub promoter in Miami taking peptides and doing microfractures on his jawline. It's a movie about that.
What sentence did you just say?
No,
I mean, Curry Barker was a YouTube. He was a YouTuber, I guess. I mean, I've seen.
That's what I mean.
He's
for a generation of young men who are, whether it's good or bad, actively seeking out father figures through like the world's biggest losers. And I don't want to crap on this generation too much. By the way, we had it when we were younger.
I mean, if the internet had been around when we were growing up, I mean, I know the manosphere would have been alive and well.
We didn't have it, Rebecca. When I was in college, and you might have been too young for this, Romeo. When I was in college, my freshman year, there was a book that came out called The Game. About
Tucker Max.
And Tucker Max, exactly.
Yeah.
And like College Humor and later on The Chive, these websites.
Yeah. Pickup artists, the pickup artist thing.
Yeah, that was all about how to talk to women and how to be a man's man. And let's not pretend that like our generation didn't have this. We had this. We just didn't have it with like streaming and like live streams at all. No, it was through intranet in an earlier era. But this existed. This loser guy mandem was definitely there when we were that age. Now, it seemed ridiculous to, I think, a lot of us who actually had conversations with girls at that age, but there was a brand of guy that was afraid to speak to women and resented that bought into that crap. And by the way, that still exists, and Obsession, I think, satirizes that brand of guy.
The
It's
nice
just
guy.
not a guy from our generation. That's why I say it's fascinating. And I think it speaks to a specific generation with a specific media diet that I'm clearly too old for. But I think it does so in a way that's very engaging. I'm very curious to what you will end up thinking about this movie, because it's a film that I think will play differently with audiences depending on who they identify with. And I think if you're maybe a little bit older, you'll be able to identify with both leads in this film. I think if you're younger, you might not, which I think will lead to very interesting date night movies and with people in their early 20s, right? But that's why I call it an interesting movie. An interesting movie for a crowd that's way too young for me. Romeo, you're out there in LA. I mean, are people talking about Obsession? Because it seems like it's the movie of the moment for the Letterboxd crowd.
Yeah, they're definitely talking about Obsession, but I think their marketing campaign was also very clever, very focused on
the billboard was awesome.
The billboard in LA, amazing. And the title works perfectly every time I say it. Like, the title is so important. It's so easy. Obsession in big, in LA, in the street. And then they float TikTok. It was all over TikTok. Like the previous week, all over TikTok, everywhere.
Able to speak that viral online live streaming language. And I think it was able to activate a younger audience of folks in a way that's effective. And it's also not lost in me that where we are right now in American commercial film history is there's very few types of mid-range dramas or risky films that are able to say anything. It's hard to make that sort of film exist right now with a business model, right? Where it just has to be all theatrical or all streaming or a weird combination of both. The movies that used to say something about contemporary culture kind of gone by the wayside. The only genre where you can do that and still get a commercial theatrical release, I think, is horror. And it's not a surprise to me that horror is the one genre that is coming out and is giving young filmmakers that debut opportunity or an opportunity to make a second or a third film, which in many ways it's harder to do that than have a debut film. Ultimately, it comes out with a film that has something to say and that I think is resonating with this younger, let's call them the Letterboxd crowd, a horror audience ages 15 to 25, which again is perfect. That's the age when all of us fell in love with horror. We talk about what Scream meant to us. How old were we when we watched Scream? Maybe even a little bit younger than 15, right? So I think it's very much a movie of the moment. I'm very happy that it did as well as it did. And yes, I can say that it didn't really connect for me, that I'm too old. But at the end of the day, you take something like Obsession. If you compare it to other mainstream American cinema that is played in this sandbox outside of the major auteur names, this is a million times better than Fatal Attraction, which is just a flawed movie. I think it's a misguided film. Great performances, don't get me wrong, but ultimately, Fatal Attraction just doesn't have much to it. This is a movie that packs a much bigger punch than something that came out 40 years ago, dealing with more or less the same themes. Very different movies, but at the end of the day, if you wanted to reduce it to romantic endeavor that leads to histrionics, there's a dumb way to do it, which I think was done in the 1980s. And there's a slightly more nuanced way to do it that say, hey, is this histrionics or is there more of a social commentary on a gender imbalance at play here? And I think that's the case here. It's not preachy. It's not heavy-handed. It's fun as hell. If you're a certain age, I don't think it'll speak to you as clearly maybe as others, which is fair.
I still want to go out to see it. It will depend on if that temperature drops below 85 anytime soon. Because for now, I am not stepping outside of the radius of my air conditioner.
Again, this isn't new ground that they're treading. Maybe our generation, the movie Fear with Mark Wahlberg probably is, although Fears has a little bit more.
Colossal was good. Vibe. Neon
Colossal was great. There are, high concept things. Comps don't really make sense. Ultimately, I think that the core theme here is male desire without regard on female agency, which is a very academic way of selling this movie.
Did you end up seeing Companion?
I didn't end up seeing Companion.
Was
there a vibe in that about this?
I'd be curious to see what you think about it, because it is a similar sort of affable, nice guy Not to spoil anything, ends up to be not so nice. Really playing with like Jack Quaid is one of those guys who you look at him and you're like, oh, he's great. He would never hurt a fly. But yeah, that was a good one that kind of dealt with that as well. Though it wasn't so much at the center of the story as it seemed like Obsession is the case.
I'm very happy that it came out and that it did as well as it did. And it might end up breaking into the top 3 this weekend, guys, because we've got a Memorial Day weekend here that nobody's expecting to break any records. That happened last year. This year, we don't have the same slate. We have a headlining film that will not challenge Lilo and Stitch at all, but that is going to play an important role in the market. Of course, the number 1 forecasted film for the weekend is Disney's Mandalorian and Grogu. Right now, our forecasting panel is expecting a 3-day weekend between $85 and $95 million, with a 4-day holiday frame between $105 and $115 million. Now, how does that fall into your own expectations, Romeo? Because you've been tracking this title very closely. Do those ranges add up to what you're seeing from your side?
Yes, it does add up. But what I'm saying and looking at the pre-sales, when we look at the pre-sales, there's always one question we need to answer: how front-loaded it is. And I usually look into 2 pieces of data, which is the concentration of box office for early access or previews compared to the weekend, and the velocity of sales per hour, should I say. What I can say about Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu is that the pre-sales are still higher than Michael. For instance, right now, I'm tracking 30% higher than Michael.
And Michael opened at $97 million on a 3-day basis.
Yeah, so that's why we could be bullish. We could.
Well, we are getting in our panel, the highest number that we got from any individual member was 110 million on a 3-day. I don't think we get there. But what you're saying is the pre-sales could lead us to a scenario that high on a 3-day basis.
It could, but my models has a ceiling of 130 million for the 4-day weekend. So I don't think we can in any way reach 130 for the 4-day weekend. I think we're more around 100, 110 with probably a 15 to $25 million Monday, Memorial Monday. And what I was saying also is we need to look at the velocity of sales. And what I can say is since the start of the week, velocity is not looking as great as Michael was looking at the time.
It's slowing down in terms of people who want to get there. I mean, I already have my tickets. Got them for Thursday.
So yeah, that's the thing. There's not much concentration on previews because it's an event movie. So I can see a healthy distribution of box office all over the weekend. But the spread between Michael is shrinking bit by bit. Yesterday, I had 35% difference with Michael. Today, I have 30%. And it's bit by bit. And if we follow that trend, I think we could have the same amount of pre-sales that Michael had on Friday morning.
That's interesting. So all in all, that $85 to $95 million range, maybe 90 million is the number to target here on our expectations. It can come a little bit under if this downward trend continues realizing. But it looks like everybody here on the panel is more or less aligned with how this movie is going to open. It is expected to beat the last Star Wars spinoff at the box office, Solo: A Star Wars Story, that came out in Memorial Day weekend 2019. And to call the performance there disappointing is putting it lightly. That movie opened to a 3-day gross of $84 million and a 4-day weekend of $103 million. So even though that's the last data point we have here, a pre-pandemic Star Wars spinoff, Mandalorian is just tracking maybe $10 million ahead of Solo's performance today. We'll see where things go once we get to Sunday. But let's talk about the other titles here because it's going to be a very competitive top 6 in the marketplace. We are expecting Michael to finish in second place because the holds here, guys, have been fantastic. Michael has exceeded our expectations every single weekend it's been in release. These holds have been terrific for this title. We expect another strong performance ending between $15 and $20 million on the 3-day basis and between $20 and $25 million on the 4-day basis. In third place, we're going to have a battle between Obsession and The Devil Wears Prada 2. Right now, we're tracking both those titles between $7 to $10 million on the 3-day and 10 to 15 on the 4-day. Rebecca, judging from your own reaction, you missed it on opening weekend, and it's a movie people are talking about. And especially if it's going for this Gen Z demographic, and it's a conversation topic for a lot of these kids. They're ending the school year. If you're in college or just getting into the final exam season, if you're in high school, I just would be very surprised if the reactions to this movie, both negative and positive, don't drive some of that younger audience back into this movie, and probably some of the older audience as well.
Honestly, yeah, I think a lot of older audiences, and myself included, tend to be, all right, just wait until you see kind of how things shake out in terms of the reviews, in terms of, it doesn't necessarily have to get sterling reviews, but if something, gains a reputation over that opening weekend for being interesting, for being something, generational and of the moment, then yeah, it moves up the list in terms of my priorities. So I think, yeah, holdovers could be good on this one. I still haven't gotten to see Devil Wears Prada 2 either, so I might have to do a double feature.
That's interesting. Yeah, and if you look at the demographic data here for Obsession, I think there's still an audience here left to discover it. Very interesting for this title. 59% of that opening weekend came from male moviegoers. I'd be very interested to hear a little bit more reaction from female moviegoers from this title. 61% of that opening weekend audience was aged 25 and older, like myself. Again, I think this is a movie that hits very well towards that 15 to 25 age range. That was only 39% of the opening weekend audience for Obsession. So I think there's still an audience left here for this title, which is why I anticipate there being a potential stronghold from Obsession here in week 2. Now, below that is another couple of titles that could eat into that performance. You've got from Boots Riley, I Love Boosters. So in terms of the Letterboxd crowd, the cinephiles, you have to think Boots is going to take a good chunk of that audience because he's earned that audience. He's going to be directing, I think, a lot of folks going to support that movie on opening weekend. We're currently expecting an opening weekend between 5 to 8 million for Boosters on a 3-day basis, and on a 4-day basis, somewhere between 7 to 12. That's more or less where we're also expecting Passenger from Paramount, another horror title, which might take away some audience from Obsession in week 2, pacing really just at the same level that Boosters is right now. At the end of the day, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I understand that Passenger has a little bit of a riff on the Twilight Zone. And if I may, a lot of Obsession's high concept charm makes it seem like an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode with gore, which kind of sounds perfect for a certain type of crowd, right? All in all, we have one title, Mandalorian and Grogu, that's going to be taking a big part of the focus. I think by this point, we've established Michael as a very clear number 2. We're expecting a solid hold there. But from 3 to 6, everything is up in the air for Obsession, Devil Wears Prada 2, Passenger, and I Love Boosters. I've already got my ticket for Boosters for this holiday weekend. Rebecca, you're probably going to be watching multiple titles here.
I have a lot of catching up to do, and but that's I'd rather have that than the alternative. So I have to give my parents something to see. They're going to call me and ask for advice, and I got to have something to tell them.
And if I may, I think the One Wish Willow might make its way into the horror lore Hall of Fame. Fantastic high concept there to introduce into a movie from Obsession. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. We are now going over to Elizabeth Frank, CEO of RealD, to talk about the latest innovations from that format and what exhibitors can expect from a slate full of titles this year from RealD, including what, in my perspective, is going to be a comeback summer for 3D at the box office. That's coming up after this break.
Now you can bring the magic back to movie theater meals with innovative solutions from Hormel Food Service. Serve globally inspired meats, premium fully cooked bacon, and top your pizzas with trending Calabrian chili flavors, all without the complexity of extra equipment or added labor. Hormel Food Service is continuously innovating revolutionary protein solutions that save you time while helping you deliver the craveable, delicious experiences moviegoers want. Visit HormelFoodService.com to learn how their innovative protein solutions can revolutionize your theater.
And we are back here on the Box Office Podcast, here in a special edition, going over 3D technology with the Chief Executive Officer of RealD, Elizabeth Frank, a longtime veteran of this industry, now helming what I have been calling here the sleeping giant when it comes to the PLFs. I think a great opportunity for exhibition. Elizabeth, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on here.
Daniel, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I opened your intro by calling 3D the sleeping giant when it comes to premiums. And of course, premium technology has been at the forefront of conversation for exhibition ever, well, to be honest, before the pandemic, but it feels like after 2020, it's just been accelerating more and more, a lot of investment going into some of these solutions. But what a lot of folks maybe haven't been too on it to realize is that they've already got a great premium technology installed in their auditoriums, most likely. RealD has been there as a pioneer in this space for over a decade now. I think closer to two. When was the first RealD release?
Yeah, so 20 years ago,
Okay.
Disney released Chicken Little. Was the first wide release in the in that fledgling digital era in 3D theatrically.
Yeah, and that really helped relaunch, I think, a renaissance in 3D technology. RealD is a company you came in. When did you sign to join the company? Was it in early 25?
A year ago, early 2025.
Yeah, exactly. And then last year, you've been putting together, I think, a fantastic team and helping revitalize this legacy brand when it comes to premium technology at the cinemas. You're just coming off a great opening weekend of the Billie Eilish concert film that was co-directed by the artist and by James Cameron. 86% of opening weekend box office domestically in that 3D format, just to reflect the sort of power that you guys can bring. Paired with Cameron's last film that hit our theaters in December, it's fair to say you guys are riding high coming into what I think is going to be a huge summer for your technology.
Thank you. It's a really exciting time. I mean, you talk about the sleeping giant. I think with some humility, we also talk about ourselves as a great forgotten format, right? Of a real originator and innovator of premium formats in cinema 20 years ago. And the 3D format had kind of not that it fell out of favor, but it fell out of top of mind consideration that I think when we look at, and we've invested a lot of time recently in consumer surveys, moviegoer surveys in the US, in Canada, in Mexico, to understand moviegoer perception of the theatrical experience broadly and the 3D experience more specifically. And it's really positive, which is not new news to anyone in the industry. Moviegoing is a terrific consumer experience and a great value. And 3D is every bit a part of that. And at the same time, between COVID and the strikes and lots of changes in the production process on the studio side, it kind of fell off the radar. And so we're seeing a really exciting opportunity for the recovery and revitalization of the format that's a terrific premium experience for consumers and is a really important source of incremental profitability, both for cinemas and for studios.
Well, let's get into that because I think for the moviegoers that listen to us at the Reader publication, if you haven't been to a 3D showtime recently, I have to tell you from personal experience, laser technology has helped put 3D and improve that experience back on the map. I mean, it is really night and day, quite literally, with the brightness levels we're seeing with the new projection systems. So I think thanks to laser, and laser now being commonplace in most of the major circuits around the world and growing by the day in footprint, I think it's helped your technology significantly. I think moviegoers that went back to reconnect with 3D with Avatar over December found this out for themselves. You've got a consistent slate of movies following that up. What have been some of the numbers, some of that data point proving that 3D right now is outperforming the market in terms of where consumers are going?
So globally, the 3D box office between 25 and 24 grew almost 30% year on year. Well, at the same time, it was a strong box office year for the whole industry, but the whole industry grew 8%. And so we see the 3D business significantly outpacing the growth of the total industry as more films are available, as cinemas, as you say, project in spectacular laser presentation, as consumers are reminded of the terrific experience that 3D can be.
And it's something that we had actually Chris Aronson in our podcast over CinemaCon. Something that he brought up that the last movie that he released while he was at 20th Century Fox was Alita Battle Angel. And it's a title, obviously, Cameron produced it. They put a lot of effort into the 3D presentation. And at the time, they had about 1,800 screens that they felt had the right presentation technology to go out in 3D. And they did fantastically well with the 3D box office. Today, fast forward to where we are now with that laser projection, with those brightness levels on the screen, you can really deliver on a wide basis with new releases and hit those top line metrics when it comes to the industry benchmarks and enjoying a 3D presentation. I think, moreover, from the benefits to the moviegoer we're discussing, there's also big benefits here for exhibitors because a big, I think, stumbling block right now is folks decide where their capex is going to go in premiums is, well, what are the terms for me as an exhibitor if I work with a premium format? You guys have been here, as you mentioned, 20 years. You've got experience letting exhibitors know that you're on their side. Also, your experience being on the exhibition side not that long ago for a number of years also helps inform and guide your decisions and how you negotiate these terms with exhibitors.
Yes. So RealD 3D is a profitable format, both for the cinemas and for the studios. We've got time-tested technology and a business model that deploys it without CapEx for the cinemas and a pretty modest rev share. So the most affordable of any of the other formats, and importantly, a complement to many other formats. So when this weekend, when you see Disney's Mandalorian and Grogu hit theaters, you'll, as a consumer, as a moviegoer, be able to enjoy 3D in a RealD 3D auditorium, thousands and thousands across the US. It's the most broadly available premium format. You'll also be able to experience RealD 3D as part of 4DX, the motion seats, as part of ScreenX, the surround visual experience, as part of a D-Box experience, as part of a Cinemark XD and Regal RPX. And so I think it's really important in a world where we've had a lot of fragmentation of consumer choice, so much innovation and many, many format ideas at times create some confusion for consumers. Exactly. Maybe just like the one more choice than you need. And I think that some of the collaboration that we're working on is going to make those premium experiences that much easier for consumers to navigate.
And I think right now that's top of mind as we get into a diversification of PLF, as you mentioned. There are so many brands, there are so many ways to enjoy a movie that the consumer can get a little bit lost on what a specific premium can mean and can entail, what it doesn't. I think you guys, probably along with IMAX, are in a really great position where your brand has been established for long enough that consumers know exactly what your brand is going to deliver. And for those that maybe haven't been in a while, that they've been coming back, I understand the audience satisfaction polling that you've been doing has been extraordinarily high in the last couple of months.
Yes, and we've been researching it more of late. I don't know that it's increasing every time your local theater upgrades the experience with laser projection, but also when the experience gets better because there are reclining seats or there's enhanced food and beverage, all of that leads to a better consumer experience and higher satisfaction. We see that RealD 3D delivers, for some consumers, higher satisfaction than a traditional 2D experience, and for others, every bit the same. So, people are paying up, choosing to buy a premium experience when they always have a choice, and they're satisfied with that investment.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And I think it goes back to the fact that the consumer knows what the 3D technology is. And in many ways, they can reconnect. I think Avatar has been wonderful as a reconnection point with a lot of these folks. And what you guys are doing this year at RealD is fantastic because it's not let's not call it the Olympics of 3D with an Avatar movie every 3-4 years, right? And you come back and you enjoy the format and then you kind of forget about it. No, you're really building on this. I think the release of the Billie Eilish documentary in early May is an example of that. And you've got a slate full of movies here where you are openly working with some of the biggest studios on their biggest titles of the year. And I think this summer is going to be one of those summers we look back at and we say, hey, this is when 3D really made that next step with consumers. Could you tell us a little bit about the movies that are coming out in your format in the coming months?
Absolutely. We're thrilled. We think it's a summer of 3D. We've got Toy Story 5, Supergirl, Minions and Monsters, Moana, and Spider-Man Brand New Day. So 6 major global blockbusters, all available in 3D, all of them being 4-quadrant films, and each of them using the 3D artistry and tech platform a little bit differently to elevate the film. So I think it's both going to be hit after hit after hit, and it's also going to highlight, both for filmmakers and for fans, the real breadth of enhancements that 3D can offer to different types of films.
And it's just getting that volume of titles back into theaters, right? So we can start promoting this as, hey, come back and live through this experience once again, rather than checking in maybe once a year, every couple of years with the format. Having this sort of slate, I think, is crucial for the success. And as you mentioned, it's already a big number of theaters domestically. Forget worldwide. Worldwide is a huge number of theaters that have the technology installed. Now is the time to optimize it. Now is the time to really put the pedal to the metal and see how far we can go as an industry. Another part of this, and I have to admit, this was where 3D had lost me when I was going to the movies a lot 10, 15 years ago. I wear glasses. You wear glasses. We're both glasses wearers. It was difficult for us to go and be comfortable watching a 3D movie experience, but it's probably not a coincidence that a chief executive officer that also wears glasses is helping usher in a new innovation that you guys are bringing in to the 3D experience. I already have my pair of RealD 3D clip-on lenses, and it's a game changer. I have to be open about that. How did this idea come through? When is this going to be available to regular consumers out there?
It's long overdue. I mean, honestly, we've had clip-on lenses like in the office, at the trade show, many of the post-production houses where filmmakers are working to see the 3D and optimize it before release, have pairs of clip-on lenses, and we hadn't commercialized it and made it broadly available. And now we are. So for Toy Story 5, across the US and Canada, most RealD 3D theaters will have these clip-on lenses available. They'll be available the same way that adult and child glasses are available. So you buy your ticket, you get to the theater, and someone offers you glasses on your way in to the auditorium, and we recycle them after. It's included in your ticket price. It's easily available. They're individual use, cleaned and bagged and such. And so that is, I agree. I think it's a game changer. Some of our research shows that between 40 and 50% of moviegoers report that they're prescription eyewear wearers, some contacts and such. But there are a lot of moviegoers who come into the theaters in glasses who will benefit from this.
Oh, huge. I mean, I've always worn glasses. I've never made the transition to either surgery or the contact lenses. And it was always annoying. I remember being a teenager, trying to make sure the glasses stayed on with my other pair of glasses. This way is super comfortable to go enjoy a film. You literally just clip them on. It feels like a premium product, actually. At first, when I first got my pair of these from your team, I was like, oh, these are probably going to retail. But the fact that you're going to make them accessible to any moviegoer with a ticket to enjoy, I think is a fantastic idea. And this is part of that resurgence, that reintroduction of 3D with audiences that is going to happen this summer. I can't wait to see it in action.
I'm excited as well.
Well, before we close, I think there's a lot of ideas on where 3D can go in the future. We've talked about in the past at different trade shows the opportunity of coming in with re-releases of certain movies from the past in the 3D format. Just looking at how popcorn buckets have completely exploded into the mainstream, I can imagine maybe some, let's say, 3D glasses themed to a certain film with a certain design that you could put for sale sometime in the future. It's been 1 year since you've been here at RealD. What are you most excited about in the 3-4 years down the line of where you can take this technology moving forward?
So there are a lot of different ways, as you mentioned. The one that I'm most excited about is that there's been significant technological advancements on the production side as well that allow filmmakers to bring 3D artistry into their work. Some, as James Cameron did with 3D cameras, and so there's been a lot of innovation that he and his Lightstorm team are bringing to bear so that it makes shooting in 3D more accessible and affordable for filmmakers. And at the same time, the companies that lead in the conversion space, offering 3D tools that allow filmmakers to make that part of the post-production process, they've advanced their art and their tools as well to make it higher quality and faster and cheaper to make a film theatrically a high quality 3D experience. And that innovation will unlock new genre in 3D. So a quality 3D experience in horror thriller, which has been harder to get to, both in some cases because of the expense and in other cases a perception that it was too dark. With laser projection and a much more consistent, brighter presentation, richer and deeper and all that, and innovation on the post-production tool side, I think we're going to see young film goers, fans especially, turn out in droves to be able to see their horror thriller experience. Like walk down that dark hallway in 3D is like even more terrifying than a traditional experience.
Hey, Alfred Hitchcock tried it back in the 50s, and it's something that I think a lot of generation of filmmakers have been wanting to go back to with the tools available to them, as you mentioned, not only in filmmaking, but in presentation. Sky's the limit, I think, with the genre as well.
Yeah, really fun and different from home.
Right. It is a completely distinct experience. I can tell you personally, one of my favorite movie-going experiences, period, was watching Gravity in 3D, that Warner Brothers title, to the point that I collect DVDs. I'm like one of 4 people that still do that. I don't have that here at home because it's not the same movie, Elizabeth. It just isn't. It's not the same experience. It's not the same aesthetic immersion as you have it when you have something that is shot specifically for 3D, and that experience completely envelops you. So the fact that there's going to be more of these filmmakers coming in and using this, let's say, palette available to them, I think is super exciting for the coming years.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Elizabeth Frank, the CEO of RealD.
Thank you so much.